Welcome to Beyond Adjustments, the podcast where we dive deep into unlocking holistic health and business success. Today's episode is an exciting one. I'm your host, Amin Saeed, and we're joined by none other than Dr. James Denito, a pioneer in holistic chiropractic care for over 40 years of experience, guys. This is going to be an amazing episode. We're going to explore Dr. Denito's professional journey, cutting-edge therapies, patient success stories, and even get his insights into growing a thriving practice through community engagement, maybe even a little digital marketing, maybe not. We'll hear what he has to say about that. If you're ready to hear stories of transformation, learn about breakthrough therapies, and gain practical advice on living a healthier life, stick around. It's going to be a powerful conversation you won't want to miss. Cue that music. Dr. Denito, welcome, sir, to our podcast. I am so happy that you joined me here today. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, it is a great honor to be on any podcast that is going to have an interest in making the world a better place. I have to tell the audience, you got me up a little early today, so I'm pumping down some very healthy coffee to get the brain stimulated. And
Excellent.
I'm looking at Amin's studio setup in there. Looks like he's a very good multitasker with all those screens on there. So
Yes,
I know
sir.
I'm in good hands here as we go through the morning.
Excellent.
Anyway,
Excellent.
let's share with the world what I've learned, and I'm anxious to tell everybody all our secrets here.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's reveal it all, my friend. Okay, so let's dive in. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about your, I would say, calling, right? Because I believe that the chiropractic industry is not your average medical or, I would say, lack thereof industry for somebody to jump right in. So what really inspired your decision to get into chiropractic care? How does your fascination, I guess, with the, and I'll do this, immeasurable shape your practice?
When I was 5 years old, I was telling everybody I wanted to be a doctor. How do I know that? And I had some doctors on my father's side of the family that were certainly an influence, but I had some chiropractic care when I was in my late teens as an athlete, and my parents were very medically oriented. They had that trust, which unfortunately a lot of us have lost now about the medical profession. But they knew not enough trust was there to have a steroid shot put in my shoulder when I was a mid-teen. So they took me to chiropractic, and that was my first exposure. And I remember that it was such a scary thing that I think I had a tear or two in my eye. I thought he had broke my neck. Well, by the time I was nearly ready to get out of high school, I was on the gymnastics team, and we were doing some show for halftime for the football rally, and I was one of those guys crisscross and dive rolling onto mats, kind of landed a little bit wrong, and ended up with a bad neck the next morning that couldn't get out of bed without some help. So skipped school that day, and they nursed me, and I ended up at the chiropractic office that night. While I was sitting there with kind of an after-hours favor, there was a paralyzed little Dachshund dog. And I was like, oh, I didn't know the dog was going to get chiropractic. And the owner said, yeah, this is a second visit. And the doctor said that this might be able to help his paralysis. And I go, oh, wouldn't that be something? Well, I had to show up every day for 3 or 4 visits to get me 100%. I was back to school the next day, and so was the dog. And by the time I was fixed, the dog was pulling the owner in on a leash, and the paralysis was gone. And that was an epiphany moment that, as I was already taking a lot of pre-med type of science classes, that, wow, I know I wouldn't be able to do that in any branch of medicine that quickly without surgery or drugs. And from that point, I never looked back.
Crazy.
This journey has brought not only paralyzed dogs like that, but we'll get into the things that have come from all over the country seeking what we can offer here. And some of that is because we do chiropractic maybe better or more comprehensively, more artful. And probably a big part of it is because we incorporate such other modalities. And it doesn't mean high-tech things. It might mean how to use nutrition the proper way or how to make a good referral to a good acupuncturist and put some teamwork together. So ultimately, the journey began when I was young, and I have a fondness for how the chiropractic colleges are hanging in there. There is
Mm.
a lot of growth of them, and the college that is near me down here in Dallas is something that I saw it going in the wrong direction and even tried to become its next president. Unfortunately, I didn't make it past the second round of vetting on there, and probably for the better anyway. My hand in politics, especially at that kind of level, I found out later I would have been very unhappy over there while still maintaining my practice. Ultimately, I see things that our profession needs to do a lot better, but not as much as the medical profession needs to do better.
Yeah. Wow, 4 decades, man. That's a ton of experience. I look over my life. I just turned 45 a few days ago, and I'm like, wow, that's like half my life probably. And I think about the things I walked through, but you had 40 years plus in the industry. So, can you tell me maybe what the most transformative lesson I would say you learned about patient care specifically?
The thing that makes a good doctor is to just listen to people. And these tests that we can run from orthopedic, neurologic, blood tests, imaging are all good. But if the person says, yeah, but it doesn't hurt there, you got to pay attention to that. If you ask the right questions, and the word patient also means be patient yourself with that. So ultimately, this is a very touch-like human connective thing. It needs to be slow and work with people in a manner where if you give them that time on the first and second visit, you can fix them in 10% of the time anybody else does in my profession by giving them the right homework. So ultimately, I became a good listener. And I think that's a value in life for any kind of conversation. But also then learning to ask the right questions, that is like a good detective. And sooner or later, you find that moment where they reach critical transition, and that's where they suddenly hurt. Now, they may say, wait a minute, I know what happened. I bent down, picked my pencil up, and my back went out. And I go, do you
Yeah.
really think that was the moment? You should never pick up pencils again, therefore.
Right.
So we want to wind it back and say, that was when you went into critical transition. Everything has that.
Love it. So, okay, we're gonna talk about beyond the surface. So your approach emphasizes finding answers beyond the surface, quote unquote. Can you share an example of how this mindset led to, I guess I would say, a breakthrough treating a patient?
We are first and foremost structural engineers, and orthopedics is supposed to be that, but posture is complex. It's not just bones and muscle, but that's what we see on the outside. Your posture can be reflected in other things. And so when I started finding that, I like counting on 5 fingers a lot. And all of us learn lessons. There's probably a book about what I learned. I could count on my fingers in life. But we have 5 categories of causation, no particular order of importance, but one might be trauma history, old and new. Second one might be posture habits. Third one would be genetics. What good or bad things did I end up with from my parents in the gene pool? Fourth thing is the chemistry of the body. What is the influence of diet and environment? And the fifth thing is emotional psychology 101. So once you understand those 5 building blocks, and they're all going to have some contribution, maybe there's a 90% on one group, or maybe they're all equal. Then when you do your thing, the underlying causes are in those 5 categories. And then you say, all right, here's your homework, and these are the changes I want you to do. And all I need them to do is make a change in one of those. Some people go crazy and they do all 5 things of homework and they want to get better faster. But ultimately, it was understanding those underlying foundational mechanisms that led to the moment, the posture, the pain, the disease label that suddenly says, wow, you have cancer. What led to that is it's never any different. So you could have a ruptured disc in your back or a pancreatic cancer. It's those 5 categories that lead to every one of these failures of our body to thrive.
Excellent. Wow. So you integrate a lot of physical adjustments in your practice, but you also touched on it earlier. You said there's nutrition, right? There could be an emotional health in your care, right? So how do you see these elements really working together? How do you connect them all to restore somebody's health or to get their body to a place where it can restore itself, I should say?
Sometimes there is a starting point in those five categories. Our profession, I guess, developed an acronym ADIO, ADIO, above, down, inside, and out. There was even a chiropractic college for a while named that. And the above down could be just the flow of the nerve system. And we think about the brain as a hierarchy and that neurological net. We also could think of spirit, emotions coming down from the collective consciousness. And then once it's inside of your body, air, food, and water, it has to go through those other boundary systems to be transformed into the energy that you need. So if we get into which of those categories is more important, I would probably have to err on the side of saying it would be the emotional one, the psychological one. And when we get into that, the thing that maybe drives its ability to help all the others is giving someone discipline. It's almost like a director in a movie trying to set the emotional tone for the actors to get the right emotion of the scene. What is their motivation? So you can give people all the data in the world, exactly what's wrong with them. Then they may sit there and they go, okay, so what's my motivation to do all that? And you're like, what do you mean? I thought you came here to be healthy. But there's some subconscious things going on that people need to have that stroking all the time. So we have drifted more and more over the years towards giving people a sense of purpose and lots of psychological approach. And I don't want to play psychologist, but our profession has developed a number of techniques that are specifically designed to get into the emotional part. Neuro-emotional technique, NET, developed by Dr. Scott Walker. Network chiropractic might be another one. The list is long. Some of them are well known even to the public. The massage therapy profession developed its subsets where when you think about what the value of a hands-on good massage is going to do for you, most people would say, well, I want to get all my stress released. Everybody kind of sees it that way. But what if you were to be more targeted? So they have techniques called Reiki and Radix as an example to get in and release the emotional stuff that's in your muscles more than move the lymph or get the scar tissue broken down. So we're going to be there, and I can only get that connectivity to people if you spend enough time with them. So the biggest secret we have in our office is when you come to see me, you're going to get 15 to 20 minutes with me, not 2 minutes, not 3. And that's one of the biggest secrets is spending time with people. Way it's supposed to be the way it used to be.
I love that because there's some places that I've walked into that I will never step foot again. It just felt like a conveyor belt. I mean, you kind of walked in, you did the thing and you walked out. And so I love that emotional connection that you have with your patients. That's, I believe, makes a huge difference in the patient care. I got a challenge question for you. If you could distill your philosophy into one guiding principle for living a healthier life, what would it be?
Believe in the future.
Mm.
If you give people one of those ink blot questions and say, if you could live anywhere in time on this planet where you would feel you would have a more fulfilling, healthier, longer life, when in time would you like to live? And I've asked this question to well over 1,000 people over the years. I stopped asking it because I get the same answer all the time. And it's mostly in the past. And they may pick some place where they think it was a little easier. Some say I'm in the right time right now. I'm in the moment. But about 1% choose the future. They might say tomorrow. They may say 1,000,000 years from now. But why would everybody not choose that answer? What's the point of all this if you're not anticipating a better day tomorrow? If you're not looking forward to things, even your death and the white light and the journey outwardly, you're not looking forward to world peace, the conquering of diseases, everything that us humans are striving for. What are you crazy? Why do you want to go back? We're not built that way. We're on a timeline and it's moving in one direction. And when I give people that explanation, they think about it and they go, can I change my answer? So My bumper sticker would be, I believe in the future. And it doesn't mean it's all going to be perfect, but your mind has to go there. And so that would be how I've distilled it all down, is to put that foundational moment there. Now, there's an underlying virtue that goes with it. It's called curiosity. And if we're in the healthcare business trying to find a cure, foundational word of curiosity is cure. And therefore, your curiosity is what drives your anticipation to the future.
Thank you for opening up there. I loved your responses, your answers. I want to get into a little bit of the therapies and techniques. Let's talk a little about stem cell and cellular regeneration. What role do they play in your practice? How have they really evolved patient outcomes?
When we work on somebody with any problem at any age, there's a point where most things that have degenerated have a difficult time regenerating. So we look at people who are still growing. Therefore, there's a lot of opportunity for anything that got sidetracked to replace, repair, and regenerate. As an adult, we still have parts that regenerate. You fall down, skin your knee, scab, skin comes back, regeneration. You could damage an organ like the liver and give it the right breathing room, repair it, the cause, and the liver can regenerate a lot. We have this ability to regenerate new red blood cells. But what about when your knee is bone on bone? Or what about when there's been a specific trauma and the body has to leave a certain amount of scar tissue behind? So by us moving into targeted nutrition, we got better and better at coaxing regeneration. But regeneration only occurs by the use of stem cells. And our body has a reservoir of them. If I were to draw a vial of blood out of my arm right now, I might find one stem cell in that vial that's circulating. I also might find some pathological cell in there as well. The system has a lot of dynamics of yin and yang and good stuff, bad stuff. But as I move to the reservoirs, fats, and then ultimately the highest fat concentration is in bone marrow, and then specific parts of the bone marrow, and especially the spine, that's where the stem cell reservoir is the greatest. So if we are trying to regenerate a disc in somebody's back, I have to coax those stem cells through that end plate into that disc, which is just millimeters away, but you might as well be trying to get to the moon through that boundary of scar tissue. So we have this, it's a very frustrating paradox there, so close yet so far. So we might find that we can inject stem cells into the local musculature around that damaged disc, and they will find their way in. The inflammation is in the tractor basin, and those cells will differentiate, and we get regeneration. By us bringing stem cells into our practice, by this summer of this year, we'll be done about 5 years of bringing that to patients. And maybe 4%, sometimes 5% of my patients need to have stem cells. Most people were getting the job done without them at any age. So it's there as a great ace up my sleeve. And we had to find the legal ways of incorporating it into our practice. The state of Texas is very medically dominated in terms of politics and money, and they don't like competition. Nationwide, there's a lot of things that are not brought into usage in the medical profession because of profit. But in this state, the chiropractic profession is bullied a bit more than other states. So we set up a legal structure to make sure through medical doctor and nurse practitioners to bring the cells to our patients without me violating the prime directive of what chiropractors are able to do. They let me stick a needle in you in this state and draw all kind of tests out and diagnose, but they don't want anything going in that needle, not in this state anyway. Neighboring New Mexico, for example, they're so short of doctors, they welcome the chiropractor with the right training and certification, and those type of prescriptions and injections could be done by someone like myself. So there's some interesting things that this deviates off into. I digressed a moment, but in the end, stem cells are a great asset for us to regenerate. Now, there's a lot of decisions people have to make as to whether or not they want to incorporate that, because most insurances are not covering it. Some are, but we'll get there. And it's a very affordable thing, probably 10% of the cost of a new knee if you want to go get a prosthetic knee. So that's cost effective. But if your insurance company doesn't pay for it, and daggone it, I paid for all that insurance, so I'm going to use it. And, that's crazy, but it dictates what people do. So ultimately, regenerative things are limited, and now we have that tool. Unfortunately, my profession started with a model called subluxation degeneration. And they had everybody convinced that when you took two bones and you started having mechanical problems, that led to a sequence of things that led to the degenerative stuff, which degeneration is arthritis. Let's just not sugarcoat it. Any translation of the word arthros for Latin for joint, inflammation of that joint is arthritis. So if you have any inflammatory process, whether the person feels it or not, or whether you can see it on imaging, it's a form of arthritis. And therefore, our model was basically saying that these structural problems led to degenerative changes. It doesn't mean that doesn't happen, but the majority of the time it's the other way around. Degeneration occurs first by microbes and an inflammatory process getting into a joint, and it starts to structurally collapse down, torque, lock up. Then us chiropractic docs come on with our knight in shining armor, hands on, and we start restoring function to that area. We do reduce a lot of pain. We get range of motion up, and that person may come in and get a tune-up once or twice a year. I guarantee you, if you're not doing something else, 10 years down the road, they'll still be coming in, and you compare x-rays and you'll watch that joint continue to degenerate because we haven't stopped the cause of it yet. So because sometimes that chiropractic did, that model got extrapolated out that most degeneration structurally was from structural problems in the first place. That certainly didn't help our profession grow in the medical community here. And there's still some purists that perhaps work by that model. But I could see through it early on in my practice that I was going to have to figure out something else here that led to a lot of the problems that people were coming into me here. And then once we said, shoot, look at this thing, there's nothing I can do to regenerate it in certain regions, especially the spine, even with all my nutrition tools. And hence, we got the stem cells. Now, I would have done them 5 years even earlier than that. We had to wait for certain things to come into place in our state here with certain groups that I could get into legally. We were sending people out for stem cells for 4 or 5 years, even before that, getting those benefits on there.
So I have to say, stem cell, and cellular regeneration, that's not something you see every day. You're not going to walk into 100% chiropractic and see that as a sign in their foyer. Can I ask, what opened kind of your eyes to something like this? How did you come across incorporating it? Maybe talk a little bit about the science without getting too deep, because we don't have that much time here together, but around it. And why did you feel like this is what you needed in your practice?
Our profession works with a guiding principle called vitalism. There's a vital force within us that knows what to do. Now, we can break it down to every little nut and bolt detail, signaling, sacred geometry, chemistry, electrical flow, as to how our part knows where to go, how a ball of stem cells turns into a full-grown human. But vitalism at least says we're going to cultivate that force, help it flow in the right places. And a lot of that was with chiropractic. Some of that was with just a good pep talk. Medicine is inherently mechanistic. You're a machine. Reductionistic. You can be reduced to parts and replace those parts. And ultimately, vitalism is such that it's almost spiritual. And therefore, medicine is basically atheistic. And you may see your medical doctor in church with you, but then they go to work and they don't really believe in any force that is in you. Unfortunately, they feel godlike in many ways, wearing the priestly robes. And that's why the medical doctor has such trust, because they know your body. So ultimately, having an understanding of that, when we started looking at those stem cells, and they are what life comes from, they can turn into anything when they get to the destination, make more of themselves, turn into a cartilage, an immune cell. They know what to do. And then there's a sequence to that. When you see those stem cells at work, you go, aha, that is ultimately, in a collective manner, a collective consciousness, what I'm doing here in chiropractic. with my hands and diet and lifestyle changes. So it was a good fit to bring in to kind of complete the circle where I can cultivate more input to that dynamic system like that.
Can we talk a little bit about the Galaxy Nutrition Center? Nutrition is a huge part of your care model. If I would maybe even say central to your care model after reading up on some of the things that you're doing on your website. So, but how would you tailor supplements and nutritional advice to meet, say, my need?
Our pharmacy, we'll call it nutritional pharmacy. We do have, I own a large property here in downtown Allen. We have a multi-discipline clinic with a lot of rooms that we rent out to complementary type personnel. So the room I'm in right now is doing a form of detox called HOCATT, which is ozone. This room also used to house one of our country's leading autism researchers, and she used this as a home base. And before that, this room system back here was midwifery. And between those two midwives, we had about 50 babies a year being born into this clinic system and being able to be part of that. And then before that, I can go on and on. So up front, we have a nutrition pharmacy that grew out of necessity. It was just a few supplements. We worked closely with a nutrition health food store. And we said to the owner over there, who had to spend a lot of time educating people, why don't you send them over to my office, educate them, and then I'll send them back to buy the supplements from you. Well, there got to be points where they weren't open at a certain time, or they didn't have a certain product because I was using more and more targeted nutrition. They had maybe a price that was still near retail and people couldn't afford that. So we started having to put more and more products. On any given day, we have maybe 50 or 60 companies represented. We had it online for a while, and that was a royal pain in the butt to keep up with FDA, not making health claims on the products and the maintenance of it. So we shut that down. But this is named Galaxy Nutrition Center, which I still haven't actually registered yet. When you talk about getting a company name, it's just something that is recognizable as a name assigned. Because I want people to open their mind to the size of the galaxy here. And you'll see some outer space type pictures behind you here. We'll get that in a minute as to those are projects of mine. So I always think big, that we're part of something very, very big here. So ultimately, those nutritional choices are made by all my experiences to just know intuitively when someone walks in the front door, one of my patients says, hey, I've got this problem. What do you got here for me? And so I may come up between patients and say, all right, let's do this. Many times I'm back in the trenches with the patient and I take them up front when I'm done with them, and I will grab a product or two for their particular journey that day. We have other much more targeted mechanisms, certain lab works that can be run. We had a person the other day where they're dealing with a prostate cancer. And so when they are going to go through the medical protocol, and we help them in making decisions on to questions to ask the oncology doctors and balancing out the surgeries, the chemo radiation choices. But we can say in the meantime, take this product here and it blocks angioneogenesis, meaning if there's any cancer cells plopping down somewhere, they're not going to get a blood supply. So it buys you time. We might give them something to break up the boundaries of a cancer mass, and there's an enzyme protocol. We might give them, so you can just go on, but you give them a few things and say, this is what the literature says. You can choose to put these things right now into your journey. So there's a lot of ways that we get to what a person is taking. And then we can just kind of say, you can take this indefinitely, take 2 bottles, and this should get the job done. Take it at this dose, then that dose. So we try and give people as much guidance as possible rather than saying, well, I used them all up. Now what should I do? And you end up back at the office with more questions. So you have to think ahead, anticipate, what is this person going to do when we reach these goals? Are they going to get motivated? They feel better. And now through better diet, I don't have to put as many nutritional products in their hands. I think their diet's going to suddenly start improving, and it does sometimes. And a lot of times you have patients say, I have no willpower whatsoever, just give me a pill and powder, whatever it is. So there's a lot of ways these products are used. But we don't have people coming in off the streets. Yeah, every few months, a curious person comes by. We have nice signs out there. We're a big clinic. But that person is just not out there because the average consumer is not curious. They're too busy getting through the day, living day to day in flight. So if someone does come in, they're like, wow, you guys got a lot of stuff here. And then we have to kind of say, well, if you know what you want, you know, it's right here. It's a good price. Otherwise, that usually requires us to kind of establish a relationship with them, and they can create some form of consultation with me later if they want to use everything we've got there in a more
Sure.
targeted manner.
Yeah. I want to jump back to a therapy that you mentioned called HOCATT, ozone therapy. What's that all about?
Everything back to 5 fingers, but there's also opposing things here, yin and yang. And so when I look at a person biochemically or any way as a whole, I would say, what do I need more of? What do I need less of? You know, the seesaw, input, output. So when we want to get stuff out of people, now sometimes it's emotional. I need you to get that stressful person out of your life, get out of that stressful neighborhood and move. But most of the time, we kind of know what that means. We have stuff in us. We have toxins, poisons, you want to call them venoms. There's different ways of looking at something that's inflammatory. And that could have come from the environment, could have come from your own metabolic waste, could have come from organisms living inside of you, stuff you took purposely, and you're taking drugs and you think they're going to not accumulate certain toxic effect on the body. So we have all kinds of ways that input is building up a reservoir of things, and our system's in some dynamic equilibrium with trying to get rid of them. And this excretion process is got a lot of exit points. It can go through the skin, hair, skin, nails, push out that way. It's a slow process. Sometimes if you're sweating, it comes out a little more aggressively. You go out the urinary system. Although the body likes to protect the kidneys, it's not going to put too many toxic things through that pathway. It'll go out through the lungs. Think about breathing out gases of alcohol while the breathalyzer can detect alcohol in your system. The body just says, I can evaporate this stuff. But most of the really bad stuff goes down the liver portals into the gut, carried out through your stool. Now, if we want to accelerate that process, I have to then think, where does it all begin? And it's always the liver. The liver is the thing that has to process everything and then allow it to reach those exit points. And sometimes it can steer them that way. Other times there's this tractor in the body will say, hey, go that way. It's easier right now. So the HOCATT is a device developed out of the country Europe, or maybe it was South America. But the HOCATT has modalities built into it. The current versions claim over 10 or 11. I don't know how they get that number. Ours has 7 right now. But the end result of all those modalities is to be destructive to the system, break stuff up, deactivate things. Like, you don't want to say kill a virus. They're not alive. You can deactivate a virus. You can kill microbes. And you put these modality factors into the system, which in turn lead to them being able to get out of the body more aggressively. A lot of the HOCATT mechanism comes through the skin and sweat because you're in a kind of an exotic steam sauna that has a mixture of gases, first carbon dioxide, then ozone. But it mixes energy frequencies, color therapies, ultraviolet, infrared. So with all that being said, a person is in there maybe 30 minutes and it penetrates into the bloodstream, oxidizes many things into a weaker, smaller state, and then they're pushed towards the exit portals, and a lot of that may come out of sweat. So you do a certain number of sessions. Someone may come in just to get a tune-up before an athletic event and perform better. Someone might come in once, twice a year as a part of a longevity plan. And then others need 5, 10, 15, 20 sessions over a period of time to help overcome a particular label of a disease. So we might have people coming in and augmenting their cancer protocols. It helps get the chemotherapy out of their body faster. Once they have put it through, it now has done its deed, and now it needs to get out over the next few days. So the HOCATT can help that person stay detox faster on here. So it has a limited number of locations in America. The devices are not cheap, and you need to have a technician standing there next to you realistically the whole time to make sure everything is good. There's a lot of adjustments on the thing. But ultimately, it was just another way that we felt that we could help nudge people along. Could all these detox things happen without the HOCATT and a little slower? Absolutely. There's just some people want to get done faster, or others who say, I won't do those things. You need to get it done for me. And so it fits that little niche in there.
Gotcha. So I want to ask you a challenge question. So we talked about stem cell, nutrition, HOCATT. There's Cox table, infrasonic treatments. All these modalities really do enhance patient recovery. But if you could integrate one groundbreaking therapy into your practice right now, what would it be and why, of course?
I think we all want to go technology. There's no shortage. Our profession loves new tech. You go to the conventions, there's plenty of new toys to make money on, especially maybe it's, if we categorize it, it may be constructive energy that helps the body resonate into and repair and regenerate. And a lot of those are destructive energies that break something down. It could be laying under red LED lights and melt fat away. These things all work, but where we're going, there's not an answer in technology for what my profession does. We're hands-on. The word chiropractic means done by hand. What heals people the most is the fact I touch them. People crave energy from others, and some are never getting hugged, some are never getting close to people, and that's sad. But some have barriers up where they have reasons to not be touched, not get too close to them. But we are a touch society, and by someone getting close and listening to them. So I don't know if there is anything other than, if I had to get back to that observation we had earlier, that there's not a lot of optimism about the future. If I could find some hypnotic tech that I could implant in your brain that tomorrow is going to be a better day, and every time you wake up, tap your heels together 3 times, that it would have to be there. There has to be something along the emotional lines. And as I said, I played with emotional clearing techniques, trying to disconnect the role of emotional experiences. And it just went down a rabbit hole where it wasn't getting anywhere. It solved one problem and opened up another one. Everybody has their ways of connecting emotional experiences, and others, you can say, hey, you've been through a terrible loss. Family was killed in a car accident. We had one of those gentlemen the other day and his recovery from that emotionally. And others, we uncover through, maybe it was the NET technique, that they carry all this tension in the neck because when they were 10 years old, they got the wrong bicycle for their birthday and it traumatized them. Nonsense things where you want to be judgmental on that and say, you got to be kidding me, you know? You got these kids over here, or they've been abducted and abused, and they're doing better in life than you are because you didn't get the right bicycle.
Right.
So that's where there's not an easy way to understand how we choose to respond to our experiences, but that's what life is. It's not supposed to be easy. We get all that. It's boot camp for your soul if you really want to put down spiritually what life is supposed to be. So ultimately, anything cutting edge would be, how do I get into people's emotions deeper? Because I don't think there is a technique for that either. There's just some moment. Maybe it would be what the revivals do at the tent, and you have a sudden healing, you know, where they catch you and you fall backwards after they've got the power of the Lord in you. Those are transformative moments for people, and they do change them. And there is lasting changes in their health. So if we could have that without me having to get a revival band going here once a week and make everybody attend that, that would be where I'd want to go. But ultimately, I don't know if there is anything right now that I wish for.
Okay. And nothing wrong with revivals, man. I mean, if we had one weekly, I would be at it. I'll be front row, my friend. So, all right. So it's no secret you empower your patients daily. You know, you have your patients that come in, oh, I got lower back pain. And you have patients that are carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. You know, you have patients that come in with chronic conditions. I'm just curious because I have people in my life that have asthma and severe at times. I would call that chronic in their situation. I have family members with vertigo, like severe vertigo. Can you tell me, and I'm sure I'm assuming here that people with these kind of conditions have walked through your door. And if they have, is there any memorable thing that stands out from a particular success story where you took someone through a journey where now they're free of asthma, or at least it's not as chronic, or free of vertigo, or at least not as frequent?
Over now in well into our 43rd year, over 10,000 people, 50 states, 7 countries have sent people here, all on referral. We stopped advertising within the first year because the motto is fix it right, fix it safely and cost effectively, and they will run out of your office without even asking for a referral. Happened to me over the years is I got so, and it's not a bad way to say this, but addictive, that when people would come back on their second visit and say, with even tears in their eyes, "You've changed my life, my pain is gone," or come back and throw me their latest PET scan and say, "The cancer's gone." I'm at that point because we live with expectations. We tell people they can do this stuff. We've seen it all the time, and I'm the only doctor that says to them, "We can fix this. We can make this a lot better, may not make it go away." So when my expectations are met, there's a different kind of celebration going on. I think what I cherish the most, and it's every day, is I really like watching kids get over things, whether it be a newborn who wasn't breathing right, and we found a neck problem from a difficult birth, or a dietary change in what the mother was using in breastfeeding. We might find young kids hurt severely in sports and may face a lifetime of pain, and we fix that. We find people who have, at the other end, struggling with things of the mind, Alzheimer's, Parkinsonism, and there's something about the innocence of the elderly and the children. And when we make a difference in those people, those are also the moments where I do get a lot more warm and fuzzy when the patient comes in, and a little more joyous. And my staff could attest to this. I go up front and take every patient back. We only see maybe, I'm only working about 24 hours a week, but that's 6 days a week, 4 hours, but I'm here 40, 45 hours still. So I'm not even below 40 hours a week. Got passion in this practice here, but I worked 70 hours a week for 10 years. People want to know how to do something. All people know this. You put the time into a business. And
That's
then I
right.
cut my hours down to 60 hours a week for the next 10 years. Then I cut my hours down to 50 hours a week for the next 10 years. And then I cut them down to 45. Now I'm below 45 in my 5th decade here, but still not even to a normal work week yet. But because of the pace and the fact that I can have that time with people, we escort them up front. I go get the next one. And as I'm going back with my next patient, who I usually send ahead of me, most of my patients touch to me one more time and say, "Thank you," one more time even. That kind of gratitude never wears
Yeah,
off
for
on me
sure.
in any negative way. That is the stuff where there's a reward that is almost every visit, because it may not be that you made much of a difference in their pain, but at least you listened to them. At least you tried something new. At least you're the person that they can trust, and they say, maybe next time, he'll get it, but this guy is on my team. So the biggest reward is just seeing people having that kind of gratitude on a day-to-day basis. And I never ask for referrals even. We stopped doing that long ago as well, because I have too many people coming in. I can't treat them all, and I've never figured out how to scale myself up yet. So unfortunately, I always have plenty of new patients. We have to turn away people and try and send them somewhere else if we can't see them right away, if they're in a lot of crisis. And we may give them, come by the office, we'll show you a device to wear, traction system, a nutritional product, and then this other doctor might be able to give you some pain relief. But that's the hardest part of it all, is not being able to help everybody who wants us to help them.
Gotcha. So my kids, I don't know if I shared my story with you, but my kids both have scoliosis, and we were doing everything to really avoid surgery. We didn't want to go to the medical route. We
You
did.
went to the Clear Institute, didn't you?
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is I didn't want my kids under the knife. I didn't want to put rods in their back. So we were on a hunt and we were already in chiropractic care, but we wanted to see what the medical industry had to offer. Well, we walked in and long story short was, well, we can't really do anything for your son right now. We'll wait till his curve gets to about 50 degrees and then we'll do surgery. I said, have a good day. Thank you very much. And we walked away from that conversation and we ended up at the Clear Scoliosis Center in Huntersville, North Carolina. And again, to avoid surgery, to get them better. And we saw miraculous things happen there. My son's curve went from 40, I think it was 41 or 42 when he started. He's now down to like a 26 or 24 degree curve. It's insane what we're seeing through chiropractic care. So for us, we have that physical evidence in front of us. But for somebody that's trying to avoid surgery, somebody that's walking into your establishment for, we'll call it a second opinion, they want a non-surgical alternative. Like, what's your process for one, kind of evaluating their situation and then offering that non-surgical solution? How can you even compare the two? Because if you think about it, for me at least, personally, when I think surgery, I think, immediate results, whether good or bad. You're going to get a result like the next day. Either you're going to be in pain or you're going to be better. And then there's that, healing process after that. For example, my dad just had back surgery. You don't understand how many conversations I had with him to avoid that. But he just had back surgery. And he's in more pain today than he was before he had the surgery. But how do you do that? What's your process for evaluating that and offering that non-surgical solution?
When surgeries are needed, most of the time it's trauma. We get that. My son out in Wyoming, April of last year, not too long ago, was 3 feet away from a unexpected detonation of a device he was developing, working with a team out there on new fracking technology. So when half the bones in your skull get broken and crushed in, you need the best surgeons on there. They were amazing. And those people are blessings to humanity. So when you take that kind of trauma surgeon and level 1 trauma centers, for instance, whether you look at the surgery needed for war and put people back together again, but now we look at surgery otherwise. Surgery doesn't make much money for the insurance industry, so they try and discourage it. The medical devices, though, they make money on. So if the surgery involves giving you a prosthetic knee, then they'll approve that. But if it's just to scope your knee and clean it up, they're not so keen on that because it's not such a big moneymaker as giving you drugs the rest of your life. But every time that somebody comes into my office, we sometimes have to go through an algorithm of whether or not this thing needs surgery. It might be a benign lesion, a tumor, a fatty tumor, maybe a cystic tumor. And you know what's inside of that, you know where it is, and you know how these things behave. You might say, you need to get that cut out. And it's going to strain the mechanics of the area. It's going to put poison in your system. And so sometimes it's that simple. Once a year, maybe out of all the people we see, I'll be the one saying we're going to have some kind of surgical intervention here because. But when you think about how many people we see a year and what's crawling in here, and that surgical intervention may be more of a let's get that cyst out of there. Let's break that adhesion off. It's not dissolving any other way. You're still going to be conservative. But if my patients know that if I'm telling you to get surgery, you probably should listen. So we take that role very seriously. When somebody has any journey, though, with cancer, surgery is always an option on there. And so we have to help them in that decision-making, pros and cons, especially that I mentioned prostate. That's a tough surgery to get right. You can get cancer out, but will you have dysfunction in that area from bladder to what? And that is unfortunately a common problem. So is there any other way that we can before we get to that surgery on there? But as far as orthopedic stuff, I don't know hardly any reason to ever do shoulder surgery or things along most of the joints in the body that we now know how to regenerate with stem cells. The only knee surgeries we ever think about are when you lose the cruciate, the ACL, PCL, when that's broken in half. Going to be almost impossible to ever get that to mend on its own. But just about everything else goes wrong in the knee. I, coming off a motocross run many years ago, my left knee buckled inwardly 90 degrees and everything was hanging on by a thread in there. And every trick I had in the book to support that, it still swelled up almost to the size of a basketball. It was pretty tough, but it healed completely without surgery. And it was in an immobilizer for 2 months. And then when you take the immobilizer off, your knee doesn't move. It's filled with scar
Yeah.
tissue, and then you have to
Yeah.
go rehab it all the way.
Sure.
So when you see things like that, your own personal experiences as well, then you find very little reason to have orthopedic surgery on anything. But most of the time, trauma surgery makes sense. Cancer surgeries make sense. But patients sometimes just need my blessing on whether to go with something or not that
Makes
I
sense.
would have told them anyway. But they come for that opinion on here. And I have to say, though, for every person that has come to me and comes regularly, even if they stop in every year or two, we have one or two others that get amnesia from what happened in here. I don't understand that. It is something that I'll take to my grave, trying to understand how people can have such profound changes with this type of healthcare system in our office even, and then show up 10 years later and tell you how they went to the dark side and had all these diseases and yet you didn't get one phone call to say, what can we do to make this better or safer? And you ask them and they go, you know what? I know why I didn't think of you. They have this amnesia and
It's
I
a
don't know
block.
where it comes from. It's blocked by fear.
Yeah.
I don't judge them on that. I just have to jump in wherever they let me on this
Well,
journey of theirs.
well, I could tell you from this side of the fence, from the patient's side of the fence, that's a real thing because so, I had my own chiropractic journey. I saw it heal my body after an accident, after like trying everything under the sun, meds, you name it, right? Pain, medication, whatever, getting it under control. The only thing that helped was finding the right chiropractic care. Actually, it was in Charlotte, North Carolina, where my body really started to heal itself through Jaeger Chiropractic. Uh, Last year, Dr. Denito, or actually now we're in 2025, so this would be 2023, end of 2023. I couldn't explain it to you. Like it almost felt like the flu without having the flu, but my body just stopped working. I was just inflamed from top to bottom. I was walking around, I was slouched. I felt like I was 80, 90 years old, trapped in a 40-year-old body. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And I'm thinking, there's this block that happens. It's like, you idiot, like go see your chiropractor. So long story short, I end up going to my chiropractor. We worked on it. We discussed the plan and, long story short, 2 weeks, I was almost 100%. Like there is a block. There's something that it's like, you saw results from something. It's almost like we're preconditioned in our mind to not do something. As we're growing up, we're being pumped with all this information. It almost becomes like this hardwire that you have to break and reteach yourself. I think that's what it is. At least for me, it was.
A lot of times, if you
So
just get chiropractic to recover even from a flu-like problem, it'll help. But when you have a specialty office like mine, where we're trying to be your family medicine, internal medicine type of approach,
yeah,
where we've already indoctrinated people that we can do all kind of things here. We have X-ray, digital X-ray here. So if you hurt yourself, we'll save you a lot of money. We'll take the X-rays and decide what's broke or not, and then whether you need a splint or send you out for orthopedic specialty. We have people that know that, and yet even with those extra thing that this is, many people call me their primary care provider, their family doctor. And I would like that model to be more and more of us instead of
sure.
ambulance chasing.
Yeah.
That's when you go for your whiplash or your lower back injury. You know what? I get those pain cases in there all the time. Horribly ruptured disc in the back. That's just that's just boring stuff anymore. We know what to do with that. It always gets better. You just tell people the timetable, do this stretch here, do this technology here, give them stuff at home. I don't want to see them in here stretching them 20 times. Go buy
Right.
the device on Amazon for $150. I'll show you how to use it. Take these magic supplements we're going to have you do to break scar tissue down. Come in here for this technology one or two times. and it's going to get better. But when I told the universe, send me your downtrodden and you're sick and, oh my gosh, be careful what you wish for, because
Yeah.
that the stuff that comes through here, we have young apprentices coming in here and they watch for a day and they're like, oh my God, I don't know what I would do with half of that stuff. And
Yeah.
where do you
Yeah.
begin? How do you put an algorithm? And that's what I'm trying to make a manual up where what would Dr. Denito do? So let's say someone come in and they had a hole in their skin next to their ankle and they don't know what it is. And we say, well, that's a brown recluse spider bite. Down here in Texas, we get those. I've seen
Yeah.
dozens of them, but we
Yeah.
stumbled upon a remedy, and it's as simple as less than $10 worth of stuff that you say to them, go do this, put this remedy on there, and in weeks, the skin's completely normal. The
Wow.
medical profession doesn't know how to handle a brown recluse bite. They
I
turn
know.
into a couple $100,000 fiasco.
Yeah.
And so does anybody think that I'll go to my chiropractor if I get a spider
No,
bite? But
absolutely not.
these are the things that we want people to remember. You
Yeah.
can try and stump me. I'll do well on Jeopardy even, except for opera and Shakespeare. I don't do well with those categories.
That's funny.
I got a thirst for everything, and I'll find a way if I have to refer you out, or I'll say, you know what, I don't know, but get back with me tomorrow and I'll have an answer for you. Now, I'm
Yeah.
curious. I want to find something for these people.
Sure. So I think it also has a lot to do with misconceptions that come with chiropractic care. I mean, I personally thought I used to believe that you could become paralyzed. You could, like, with all these, just some weird stuff that would kind of bounce around in my head. Again, it's all from gossip and all from just very bad information that I was fed. But I, I got a challenge question for you around misconceptions. What would be the most common misconception about chiropractic care that you'd like to dispel here today?
Yeah, I guess it's that the people tend to think we're just pain doctors for
Mm,
neck pain, back pain. That's about it. Even when you think about knee pain, that's orthopedics. They don't think of chiropractic. You think about headaches, that's a heck of a pain in your skull, and they don't think about chiropractic. We have boxed ourselves into just basically spinal pain and things relative to the spine. Well, you got pain down your leg. We can at least maybe get some sciatic cases, neuropathy down there. So that's the biggest misconception, is that people don't know we are trained to be primary care providers, and chiropractic will be part of what your journey will be. And if the chiropractor does nothing but manipulation and says, now go see a nutritionist, a functional medicine doctor, that's great. At least they'll tell you your next step.
yeah, yeah, makes sense. So let's get into a little bit of the business and marketing side of things. Now, I know you built a thriving practice, which congrats, man, because without having any kind of marketing in place for most of your practice's life and to grow it to where it is today is phenomenal. And it's not your cookie cutter situation. Most chiropractors that open up a private practice will need marketing in order to keep that door kind of revolving and so on. So I would say it's largely through word of mouth referrals, because how is everybody that's walking into your practice hearing about you? So how have you maintained such a strong patient loyalty, I would say, for them to keep coming back and then referring others?
Well, I say we did market the first year. It ranged from a billboard, mail outs to people, ads in different places. You go to the gym and you'll see a little thing about yourself, to the bowling lane when you're putting your scores, the way it was done back in the early 80s, and you'd see your name up there. After all, somebody bowling must surely need chiropractic. And we put that, but it started to develop more from me being in the community. So when I would volunteer to do things, I did a lot of work helping this area get a suicide and crisis hotline. And so I put time in on the phones, talking people off the edge. I joined clubs like Toastmasters to get better at public speaking. I joined the Rotary Club and was in a very prestigious group and made connections in the community. When I started doing talks, I did dozens of them in different places. It was hard to say how I got an invite. Maybe a patient said, hey, I have this little particular group. You want to come and talk? 10 people, 20 people, 50. You know what? I never really got patients out of that group. But I went to the office the next day and we would have a couple of calls coming in for new patients, but they had nothing to do with what I just did on the lecture, but it stimulated the energy, the dynamics. So it drew people in, but it drew them through a different portal, so to speak. But then it got to a point where I didn't have time or even desire to do that anymore. And so these are all in the first 5 to 10 years I was interacting within the community. I had no time to go have lunch with the Rotary Club anymore. Again, I was working 70 hours a week. Over 30 years ago, I also was doing radio. I had a gig handed to me by a medical doctor friend who down here paid for a time on a Saturday 2-hour show up in New England area. We were on station out of Connecticut, WHAM, WHAM. And he said, look, he had a cancer clinic down here and he was drawing people down. He said, I don't have time for this. Can you take over the show? You kind of a ham in front of people, in front of an audience. And I said, okay, how long is it? And I had 3 or 4 more months to go into contract. Bottom line is I stepped into that role and had no fears. I didn't pay for that advertising. I decided to start speaking my mind and got a bit political, got a bit comedic, got a bit sarcastic, and we had call in. And by the time that contract was up, I'm like, ooh, that was a lot of work, 2-hour show, but I had to put in 10 hours a week in research to get ready for my content. So I had a lot of time put into this stuff. And then here's the jump of it all. And I don't want to say this is regret. The station management said, we would like to put you on a drive time show up against Howard Stern. And I go, what are you talking about? And they go, you don't know how big your show is? You have a massive audience.
Right.
I thought it was a few hundred people listening to me, but I didn't know this was a 50,000 watt station over a 7-state area, and it was being heard in New York City.
Wow.
Everybody started to come in to hear this radical doctor.
Yeah.
And I was trying to create a dynamic where people were trying to see why they wanted to be unhealthy. Why did they stress eat? Why were they angry? And why did they do this or that? They were going to give me a couple-hour show, but I needed to move up there, get into the studio, and my kids were young. It was barely a dozen years into my practice, and I wasn't ready for that. It wasn't my calling at the time. So I turned it down. They weren't happy because they apparently started doing some marketing on the thing and putting the whole thing together. They thought, what person
would turn something like that down? Yeah.
They know how filthy rich Howard Stern is for being a potty mouth. You might say I could have some regrets about not taking on that role there, but maybe I'd like to think things happen in due time, and I'll influence the world in a different manner right now. But that's why I got back into podcasting as a new form of radio and being able to build an audience. And it's a different way to climb that ladder, but we'll see. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
So I'm not going to spend too much time here because it sounds like your efforts are really more that connection that you're making, whether it's through education or, taking the time to spend with your patient, right? Because it sounds like your focus is your patient, and that's what's growing your practice. Your focus is making sure that you're dealing with each person individually and not looking ahead to the next person, but making your time focused on that person. And I think, in my opinion at least, that's what's growing your practice is you're putting the patient first.
Think about how people want to spread the word through a religion. They see the light, they feel connectivity, and they want to go share. Some religions kind of mandate you go out and spread that word, but you feel compelled when you feel something is powerful, spiritual like that. So when people are really getting better quickly, and it's not just me promising that, but after a few visits and they see such profound changes, they are compelled to tell people that. I don't have to ask them. I used to say, hey, send some people in if you feel better. And that was long ago as well. It's just like, you know what? You do the right thing for people and they will beat a path to your door. And it hasn't failed me yet. And you know what? They send good people in. You don't drag into your office somebody who expects a deal and after 5 visits want you to give them a punch card for free chicken dinner down the street even. I mean, God, the marketing things that our profession does just make me cringe to make people motivated to come back. I want you to come back because you want to. And if you feel good in 2 visits, and I said it might take 2 more and you don't come back, who am I to judge you? Your journey. Not gonna, and that's a lot of those people hang their heads in shame. I'm sorry. I've
Yeah.
I've been bad. I've seen another chiropractor, but he didn't help me. It was my insurance let me, think that this was better, or it was 5 minutes closer drive. Will you please take me back? And I go, for God's sake, stop. Get on the
Yeah.
table and let's go
Yeah.
do it. I'm
Yeah.
so busy. I'm sorry. I didn't even miss you. You get so many people you see. But
Yeah.
it is an amazing emotional connection, and people want to share it. And that's what people, my profession, but anybody, to make you feel special. You could be a dentist, medical doctor, even if the medical model says you only have 5 minutes, you can do a lot in that 5 minutes in the way you're currently treating people.
Right.
You're an
Right.
adversary to them, not their advocate. And you can change that whole attitude. Could be more than just a handshake when you walk in the room, but yeah,
Yeah.
just make
Yeah.
people well and they'll send people to you.
Love it. So for chiropractors that are looking to grow their practice, what's your advice for balancing the patient care and the business growth?
Yeah, it's a chicken or the egg question. Unfortunately, a lot of the colleges have been blamed for not putting a good business model together, and that led to a lot of practice management. Those guys, they got the big ads and the thousands of dollars of suits on and the dark tan all the time, and come to me, and I will teach you how to build a high volume, multi-million-dollar practice. But that's a business model. So a lot of the colleges are paying more attention, so you don't have to go to practice management gurus to do that. You certainly have to have some business sense. There's no doubt about how to put a budget together, how to figure out how to market yourself if you
Yeah.
have to initially, with social media, maybe.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
free if you know what you're doing on there.
Right. Right.
And joining clubs is free. But to advertise in today's world of thousands of messages everybody gets every day, you got to be out of your mind if you think you're going to master that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there is a point where you'll have to put some effort into making the community know you're there. But once you get a few people, so I tell you this, if you're building a practice, pray that the first people that come in your door are the ones that nobody else can fix. And
Mm.
they're throwaways, and they'll come to you. They may be on a 4-point walker with 6 back surgeries. If you get that person in there and you make them even 50% better, they're going to start sending people in. So that's what we did. We told the other doctors, hey, anybody you can't fix, send them over. And that's another
Yeah.
thing I'm just baffled by, almost angry. In my day, we all met each other. We all knew who we were in our town here as
Yeah.
chiropractic doctors. And you said, hey, I'm new in town. If you could send me a bone, that'd be great. Maybe even, can I come by and watch you work for a day? Of course, we'll help each other like that. Nowadays, I
Right.
got chiropractors opening up 3 blocks away. I don't worry about competition. The more, the better here. But
Yeah.
they never came and introduced themselves, asked for any help. It's like, why?
Yeah.
How do you think that this is a good idea?
Well, it's
So
fear.
unfortunately, these younger doctors, these younger generations have a different thought process. We're
Yes.
seeing the common sense fading away everywhere. Whether you're a
Yeah.
chiropractic doctor, I don't care. It's
Yeah.
something about the genetic pool is declining, but that's common sense. Why?
I agree. Yeah, I think it's fear because we've become such a competitive society. We're no longer this kind of team-centric culture. Everybody's just trying to get ahead of everybody. Whether they, have this core belief of actually wanting to help people or not, there's still that kind of preconditioning of I want to be bigger and better than the next person. So we're afraid to share our tactics. We're afraid to share our secrets. We're afraid to talk to somebody in our profession to say, hey, this is how I do things. It's never about the bigger picture anymore, unfortunately, but that's where we're at. So, I mean, I'll tell you this, I don't help everybody. I will turn chiropractors down as far as my client's concerned, because if I don't see the right motive, and also just the way my product is structured, it's a very custom product. So I only take on 2 clients a month anyway. But I will turn them down if I don't see a true, if it's more business than actual patient care, I won't work with them, only because that's not why I got into this business to begin with. And for me to have more of a patient-centric mindset when it comes to my marketing business than a chiropractor that I would help, It's just not going to happen. So I get it. I get what you're saying. I come across that. I talk to those people, but it's unfortunate. All right, good stuff, man. Hey, so I want to talk a little bit about, and we're kind of winding down a little bit here, just a couple of topics around really the future of holistic chiropractic care, and then we'll close it out with a couple of personal insights. But so let's discuss a little bit about the emerging therapies, right? So there's advancements out there, I'm sure. What are the ones that you're most excited about in chiropractic care, like from the stem cell treatments to maybe I don't know, genetic targeted nutrition, etc. What excites you?
I think the more technology, could be lab work, especially genetics, the more we can understand who a person is, because that's really what a good diagnosis is, asking enough questions and listening to people. But now if you listen to the other data, you can get ahead of something, even emotionally, perhaps. So I'm watching a lot of genetics. I was the chief science officer for a growing national weight chain called Slim Generation. The reason it's not here right now is it's had some financial mismanagement that I had no control over. Otherwise, I was in charge of understanding the genetics of weight loss. And we had 13 locations, 20 coaches, and we were negotiating with Weight Watchers even to go in. And then it all fell apart, unfortunately. But I had an interest in genetics way back, and especially in diet behavior and obesity. So I do follow genetics a lot, and how we can use epigenetics to change the environment to get better expression of our genes, and including even our behavior, emotional. But as I said, there's a lot of gizmos that kept coming in our profession, and they don't make chiropractic any better. They may be a place that does technology safer, and saving somebody from some aggressive medical procedure or drug, but it still starts to add cost to the journey that you may not have had to do it with that fancy technology. And we're trying to be a cheaper alternative for medicine. And right now, a lot of studies are showing for especially back pain that our profession may do it safer, maybe a little faster, but we're not doing anything cheaper anymore. And that's not good, because especially if you think about, wait a minute, how could we be more expensive than back surgery? Well, again, you're taking the whole pool of data, and medicine handles theirs with everything from PT to surgery and drugs, palliative. But when we collectively show what we're doing, we're not beating a lot of the financial aspects of this. And this is the biggest thing that we should focus on when you say, why would people come to you at cash practice? They have to be able to afford it. There's no insurance for most people coming to see me and what they're willing to pay me, because they know they're getting their money's worth and they can afford it. So all these technologies coming into my profession are not making it any cheaper for people. So the more we can find a technology that gives us a shortcut that says all you got to do out of all these supplements is, if you run out of money, just take this one and that will activate maybe the MTHFR gene better, or keep your colon more balanced. Or so that's what I'm kind of keeping an eye on, is understanding the human genome better. Unfortunately, the biggest problem with me delving into genetics is, if I had to say what I would want the world to have from all of our genetic understanding and where research is going and genetic manipulation, I think the human race needs a massive genetic upgrade to our IQ. You throw 100 more points on the entire human race on average, we're going to be smoking it. Who knows what our boundaries are? Would we get over stupid things of fighting over religion and fighting over resources, have awareness and be able to think things through more? Heck yeah. So I'm interested in genetics because somewhere along the line, someone's going to be able to start saying to parents, okay, Mrs. and Mrs. Jones, we have the ability to give little baby inside of you the upgrade that you can give them superhuman hearing or super eyesight or whatever. We'll probably get there. And that's not a good thing to go beyond, I think, what our divine design is. But I think genetics, at the very least, should recognize, put it back to the way it was. We got a lot of broken genes, like we can't make vitamin C, but we should. It's in mammals, but we're broke. We can't make vitamin C. Imagine how healthy we could be if we can make vitamin C with our connective tissue, our immune systems, etc. But if you go and say to these parents, we can give your child the genetic upgrade and put its IQ at 150, I think we should take that, because I think we all have lost that too. So I don't think that is playing God. I think that's trying to put things back to where God wanted them. So
Mm,
my interest in genetics is very profound in all kinds of ways, from just how to eat better to what the future of the human race may have to look forward to.
yeah, I hear what you're saying. Personally, I have a little bit of a different belief when it comes to that. So, and I'd love to actually take this conversation offline one day to talk a little bit more about it, just you and I. But I believe that we are by God's design, right? And I believe God doesn't make mistakes. That's my belief, right? But and I think that the way we do that is we tap into what He's already created versus kind of augmenting that. Again, that's just how, that's what I believe. That's what, at least, and again, I believe in the Bible. I believe that God is the creator and so on. So, but I love your train of thought. I love that you're into the genetics piece of it. And I'm actually really interested in talking about it some more. I just wish we had more time on the show. Well, maybe you can come back again. We could talk about it some more. I'd love that. So let me ask you this. So you've been in practice for over 40 years. There's no way that you're doing business today the way you did business back in 1990. That's not the case, right? So you've adapted. Obviously, you've adapted your services and so on, right? Because you want to meet the evolving patient needs and expectations. How have you adapted yourself in order to meet all those expectations? And then, of course, keeping the future in mind really is what this question is about.
Well, as the world has changed a lot, I think it's not been going in the right direction for a while. We can sense maybe the pendulum goes back and forth in cycles. We've been watching an endless cycle of debt-based money system.
Yeah.
And so if anything has been linear throughout my career, has been watching us all work harder for less buying power. So that's why I emphasize the role of getting somebody healthy as cost effectively as possible. So we are probably doing a lot more for people in the given amount of time. It's much more hectic than it ever has been because people come in and they might as well be unrolling the Dead Sea Scrolls of what's going on with them that day. It's not just that I heard here and there. It's all kind of things. And you got to give them a little bit of a tidbit. And they may be saying, one more thing. I've got a cousin who has this problem or that, and they want one more piece of advice about somebody. So we're just trying to being more comprehensive than ever, squeezing more information and help into the same amount of time. So I'm trying to be more stress adapted, drinking more adaptogenic teas and things like that to help out.
Mm,
Making sure I get sleep, making sure you get your gym time. I do not want to be a hypocrite. There's a lot of virtues we all need to be by. Hypocrisy is one of mine. That if we can basically live the life we tell people to by example and don't claim to be perfect about it, I just say, hey, I'm 98% perfect on what I'm trying to do with diet and lifestyle. And I think my actions are now, as I get older and older, and people say, wait a minute, how old are you? Like 67 this month.
wow.
How do you still do these things that you can do when you're in your 20s? Yeah. This year, I'll be back at the gymnastics center working high bar and rings and doing stuff that and nobody does at this age.
I used to be a
Because I don't
gymnast.
allow my body to get old, and as well
Yeah.
as my mind thinking on here.
Yeah.
So it's harder for me to stay healthy because I'm having to give more and more of myself to people who are facing more and more intensity to their troubles, especially financially. And it's back to the thing, if you can control the financial stress, you get people healthier because, for instance, bankruptcy, the ultimate in a financial disaster, is driven dominantly by health crises in people. And it takes all their money, and it shouldn't do that. So if we get people to stay healthy, then the finances work out for them better.
Love it. I love that you're saying you're going back to do the rings and bars and all that. I used to be a gymnast myself. I cannot see myself getting on the parallel bars again. I'd love to. Maybe I will. Maybe
Yeah,
I will one
I'm
day.
done
Who
with
knows?
it now. It can
Who
be done.
knows? Yeah, who knows? Who knows? But man, you do not look 67, man. Literally, I don't know. So I want your secret. So whenever you publish the Dr. Denito memoir or playbook, I want to see that thing.
Well, it is the vitamins you take every day. There's the targeted nutrition. It's not that expensive, not that exotic, but it is special. I take a
Yeah.
stem cell booster systemically every year, and we know that puts time on the telomeres and it regenerates the whole body. So I will forever take a little stem cell booster, and that is who knows how many decades of extra life that's now worth. That one thing.
Yeah. Let's do a little reflection here. Again, really long career, man. I just think about it. I'm like, wow, like this, it's a lifetime, literally, more than a lifetime in some cases. So, kind of looking back at your career, Dr. Denito, what has been the most, what's been the most fulfilling part of helping your patients achieve better health?
I guess the most fulfilling is that everything that I've been driven and forced to do to help my patients, the most fulfilling is it's given me a longer life. I have lost parents at earlier ages. There's a curse, we like to jokingly say, to my side of the family. My father died at 70 suddenly. His father died suddenly at 70, and his father died at 70.
Wow.
And so 3 years away from that, I am determined to shoot for 130 years minimum
Mm,
here. And I didn't really know how to do that, except I'll just try things more and more. But the more I'm driven by my patients to help them, the more I see it's going to give me the lifespan I need. Because why do I want to live that long? Because I got such a list of things to do yet to help the world on a larger scale. So ultimately, I'm selfishly saying the most fulfilling thing is I think it's going to make me healthier. Even things where old injuries have healed better than I anticipated. Recovering from things, my eye, this side, is legally blind. It was poisoned by the polio shot in 1959. Other kids lost worse than that. And so growing up through life with just one eye, depth perception had to be learned differently,
mm,
self-esteem, and I've thrived with that. But you know what? There's things that are starting to show improvement here. I can
wow.
color red. I have peripheral vision is starting. There's a real mess in there. We're looking for the day they can inject stem cells in there.
Wow.
I have a feeling one way or the other, I might be able to see again out of this eye with that. And that's something I never thought of, that if I were in any other profession, I probably would never have any purpose to even fix something like that. So always trying to make myself better as well.
Got it. So it's no secret that you've walked through some adversity and that you've derived some lessons from. If I could, and if this is at all invasive in any way, please shut me down. But your mother's cancer diagnosis, I would say, sparked this journey into alternative medicine, if 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 I may say so. How did that experience really shape your approach to the care you provide today?
Well, it taught me very early, because I was in the just first few years of my practice, that I didn't have the knowledge or the tools to really help her when she came to me from up in Pennsylvania and kept kind of a secret. Didn't want to stress, I guess, people out. But she had barely 6-month prognosis. And so I had to send her to places that did a much better job comprehensively. And it showed us a lot about how they started incorporating a variety of modalities together, including the spiritual stuff. So it humbled me, but also got me really curious as to how an IV of something was better than swallowing it. It might just be high dose vitamin C was a tool for them. And she did a lot of what they told her to do. She made a couple of trips down there and ultimately succumbed 10 years later. Looking back, if you think about now what we know, and if she had maybe taken some of their advice more seriously, 20 years could have gone, maybe extra life, 30 even, who knows? But it
Mm,
did show, wow, there's there's a lot of potential here. So it was something that started bringing other cancer people to us. So we have cancer patients all the time now. Unfortunately, there's a bump of them because of the last 4 or 5 years when COVID came and the COVID vaccines. It did
yeah.
bump up cancers. There's all kind of reasons cancer was growing, but that was unfortunately a big.
What's your goal? What's a one goal, maybe initiative that you're excited about to pursue in these coming years? You're one that's has this, future mindset, right? Let's look ahead. So what's something that you're excited about that you're looking to pursue?
I have two things behind me. On this side is a book I wrote called Majestic One. It's on Amazon. I'm going to redo the cover and update some things, but it was a book that talks about the future and sees it from a future scenario of the human race and our journey, both technologically and spiritually. It maybe I'll get lucky and Hollywood will make a movie out of it because there's a lot of bad science fiction movies right now. On the other hand, this poster back here, and any doctor that wants one, just write us and we'll send you one. This was called the Future Health Model. And this was, I had to put together a You Are Here chart, almost like in the mall when someone had a journey through cancer and there were so many choices. I put a genealogy study of the world's healing arts together. And we put that into a visual format. And from afar, it's some artwork, which is original artwork commission that I did the preliminary drawings for. And there's a dialogue in there. You get up close and there's all kind of healthcare systems of how they all connect together. And there's an instruction as to how a person can put little pins on there and then realize, wow, I haven't been over there or over there at all. And no wonder I'm still not well yet. It opens their mind to a direction, a path, a navigation. So the Future Health Project was conceptually able to get me the big picture. And so those are the things that are something that I can use to teach other doctors how to put this stuff together. So that side's for the doctors and that side's for the general public to see the future in a way. Now, on the other hand, my biggest project is dealing with new oil and gas fracking technology. And because of connections and friendships and the science and be able to have a dialogue with people of a certain intellect and have them bring me into their circle. So out in Wyoming, we have a project I've been involved with for 9 years. And this year we get it to commercialization. We have proof of concept, and we have done something that everybody dreamed about in the energy industry is how to take an oil and gas well and get the rest of the stuff out of that well, because people don't know this, but this invasive, environmentally invasive, cost ineffective method of fracking wells today, stimulating them to get anything to flow, leaves behind 80 to 90% of the hydrocarbons, gas and oil. That's how inefficient it is. And then they just go drill another well. And then they go drill another well. So if you could go down in there and truly crack open thing and allow that to flow without having to do it the way we're doing today. And basically, how do you harness a lightning bolt, send it 10,000 feet in the ground and discharge it in a certain manner that turns rock into sand and boom. So the people knew this could be done, and they even the Russians tried first put a nuclear bomb down in a hole and see what happened. And you can imagine it would put a lot of oil out, but it would be radioactive, so it didn't work out. But ultimately, there are millions of wells, oil and gas wells in North America and Canada alone that are capped, not filled up, capped. And they have names: orphan wells, abandoned wells, legacy wells, and all that oil and gas is in there. And we found a way to get the technology to be developed right now. And so we're in that phase now of building out our first rake system to go out and start fine-tuning it on these wells. Believe me, the world is going to be and is beating the path to our door right now, from working with the Department of Energy in our country to even the biggest oil and gas company in the world, the Saudi company, Aramco, a multi-trillion-dollar company. They all wanted this holy grail. They've all been trying to get it. And we not only have achieved it, we own patents.
Wow.
So it's my job to steward that now outward, because it's a long story worthy of an entire podcast of why I'm in charge of the build out of that. And the science of all of that was left up to my genius friend and his chief engineer, my son. And we have a whole team out there in Wyoming. So this is my passion, and I will be having to take a little more time out of my practice in the next year or two, but I'll still be here to help steward that and build out those companies, because what we're going to do is we're going to go to every oil and gas well that's capped and go back in and get all that out. So we're telling the world, you never have to drill another oil and gas well again. Never. There's so much in there. We'll go in there and do it for such a cheap price. We'll have such a safe environmental way of doing it that the cost of oil at the gas pump should go down in half. Everything that energy is used for should be cut 30 to 50% as this new method of getting that efficient level of oil and gas
Wow.
out while our world transitions into something better than stupid windmills and solar panels. Okay. Trust
Yeah.
me, the future is beyond that.
Yeah.
We're not quite ready for those magnetic spinning motors yet, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So that's a passion, and that is something that it's a long story how I got in there and what kind of
Yeah.
science interest I had. That's why I was working with black holes and worked on a research paper that is still making its way around some of the scientific community with curiosity. So I've had the privilege of shaking hands with Sir Roger Penrose, for instance. He's one of the Nobel Prize winners on black hole work, and got to meet him at a symposium through some of my other academic friends and talk about this. So
Mm.
understanding that kind of technology is what helped give the confidence for this team to bring me in and help sell and steward the growth of that. So chiropractic is going to change the world in its way, but you give the world a better source of energy. Wow, that's something that you start taking that financial burden off people, and we're right back to where we started. That improves everybody's health, and they get their
Yeah.
lives back. Because right now, everybody's turned into freaking slaves to this financial system here.
Mm. I gotta tell you, I did not think that that's what was gonna be your your future initiative. That's pretty cool. Chiropractic and a solution for fracking. That's interesting. I love it. All right. So how can both doctors and patients alike, what's the best way for them to contact you, reach out to you, find you essentially?
Everything comes through my chiropractic website, denitochiropractic.com.
Okay.
We have a lot of different websites, obviously, for all this stuff, but everything's linked into that hub, so we can go
Okay.
from there with it. And that's easy enough to remember. It's a long
Excellent.
lot of words, but you can maybe put a little banner up on there and go
Absolutely.
from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you could leave listeners with one actionable piece of advice for really prioritizing their health, what would it be?
This one is an easy one. It's actually is going to be on my tombstone,
Okay.
and it's going to say, "It's the fiber, stupid." If you want to do one thing about what guide how and what you eat, if you base it on where's the fiber, everything else will follow from there. It's just that simple. And I'll get into, you can have a fiber lecture on here, but it's the fiber.
Okay.
And there's no fiber in animal products. There's none in your dairy, your meat, your egg. It's the vegetarian stuff. And where is the fiber in there? It's not so easy. You might have a salad. So have a salad every day. You're about
Mm,
a fourth of the way there for your daily fiber. Okay.
gotcha.
And our ancestors chewed all day long, but we don't have time to chew. So we have gummy foods and it just melts down your throat. But
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you chew food, think about how long you're going to chew on a stick of celery, all right? And that fiber ball you swallow. But that's who we were. And our ancestors were eating 5 times as much fiber. And they had different reasons they died, but we're dying of degenerative diseases. And when you start putting that sequence, remember, addio, above, down, inside, and out. So we talk about what's on the inside, how it gets in, how it stresses our immune system, our energy. Put that fiber in there, you break this chain of disease.
Got it. Love it. Thank you for that. Dr. Denito, thank you so much for your time today. It was an honor. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
We'll see everybody again somewhere soon.
That wraps up today's episode of Beyond Adjustments. A huge, huge, huge thank you to Dr. James Denito for sharing his incredible journey, his insights, his vision for the future of holistic health. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review. You can also visit cyberadjustment.com to learn more about how we're helping chiropractors grow their clinics and impact more lives, because that's really what it's all about. Until next time, stay healthy, stay inspired, and keep unlocking your potential, both in business and in life. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.